Okay, so I finally got my dashboard out of the car, and as you can see, it's got leprosy here. And I also noticed too that this part down here is all melted, and my car has a bunch of cigarette tar everywhere. If you watched my video on gauge clusters, the difference between the two, you'll see how the gauges themselves were all yellow as well. So I'm going to be completely replacing both the top and the bottom of the dashboard. I need to retain this black portion in here. That's the only part of this dash that's going to remain. But I have another maroon one that's in better shape down here. There's a little piece missing out of the side right here, but that's no big deal. And I'm going to actually put a black top up above. So it's going to be all black on top with maroon on the bottom. So I want to talk through first how to disassemble this before we actually walk through and do it. Because I want to make sure that you know right up front how long it's going to take and why. And so you have time to get what you need before we dive into this. And what I was able to do, as you can see, is all the wiring harnesses are still attached to this dashboard. So I'm going to try to be removing as little as possible because I want to transfer it over to the new dash whenever I can, but all these things are all interconnected. So I will have to remove it from parts from the bottom, and I cannot just take the metal structure out. I'll show you guys that in a little bit when I flip this over to talk through the underside of this. But there's a couple things you're gonna need to take this dashboard apart. The first thing you're gonna need is a drill bit and a drill so you can drill out the VIN number. If you're putting in a different top, you're going to wanna make sure that you install the correct VIN number for your vehicle back on it. To alleviate any confusion, if you decide to sell your car down the road, your title says one thing and it has a different VIN number here or no VIN at all, that's going to throw red flags. So you're better off, if you're doing this, just to do some due diligence and take care of this. And all you do is you get a drill bit that's a little bit bigger than this hole here and here. You just drill it until it pops, and then this whole thing will come off. You'll be able to push the remaining parts of the rivets through, and then you'll be able to just rivet your VIN number plate right onto the other dash. The other thing you're going to need to know about this is going to take several hours. And the reason is Honda used some extremely strong glue here and here on both sides of the dash. And the only way to get that to come apart without damaging the dashboard is to soak it. And what I recommend soaking it in is white vinegar, which I have pictured here. There you go. And the reason is white vinegar is good for breaking down glues. Here in America, something that kids like to play with is called slime. And slime is made out of only a couple of components, one of them being glue. And if you get slime on clothes, if you get it on your carpet, whether it's still in slime form or it's completely dried, the best way to get it out is to use hot water, Dawn dish soap, and white vinegar. And white vinegar is gentle enough where it will dissolve the glue and without damaging the clothing or the carpet, whatever it's spilled on. And the concern is you don't want to damage any of these components. These things are all old. There's a lot of concern around the padding and this membrane in the middle here that could easily get damaged. And white vinegar should not discolor this, should not cause any damage to this at all. I did it with a black and tan dashboard, and I was able to successfully get it to separate after a while of soaking. Without damaging anything, but I did destroy the rest of the tan part of the dashboard in the process trying to pull it apart. So that's why I know that. Apple cider vinegar is a lot more acidic. Apple cider vinegar will eat corrosion on metal. It'll also soften JB weld. I actually had a part on my car that was leaking coolant. It's part of the coolant system. I have an LXI, so my engine's fuel injected, and there's a funny looking T-shaped tubing that the coolant goes through. And that was leaking, and the previous owner put JB weld on it, and I needed to get the JB weld off so that I could see what was really going on with it. And the apple cider vinegar softened it up enough so it peeled off like old bubble gum. And I don't know what apple cider vinegar will do to these components, so I do not recommend using that. And also any acetone or thinners or anything like that, that will probably damage the plastic. So I do not recommend using those either. It could, depending on the chemical, could potentially actually melt the plastic, which we don't want. So once we get all the screws taken apart, we're gonna have to soak one end for like an hour in white vinegar, try to pull it apart. If it doesn't come apart, soak it for another hour, and keep doing that until we can get it apart, and then do the same thing on the other side. So that's what's gonna take the longest with this whole project, is soaking to get this glue to separate, so we can separate the two pieces. And this is on both sides. The other thing you're gonna need is a very long Phillips head screwdriver. The reason is there's a screw in here, right between these two layers of plastic, and you can't get a short, chubby Phillips head screwdriver in here. It won't get to it. I tried using a multi-angle ratchet with a Phillips head bit on the end. I still couldn't get it. The only thing that I could get at the screw here is to a very long Phillips head screwdriver, so it cleared all the layers of plastic here so that I could turn it and unscrew it. So you're gonna need that tool as well. And the last tool I recommend is if you have one of those plastic, what are those tools called that you use, plastic trim tool, to apply pressure in here whenever you're trying to separate it. I do not have a plastic trim tool, so I will be using a painter's tool, not to gouge this or to force it, but just to apply pressure. So I'll make that very clear, because it will eventually pop apart. The glue actually likes the harder plastic better than this foam surface, but it is extremely strong. If you don't go through this, soaking it and trying to pop it apart, you will destroy the rest of the dashboard in the process. So it is necessary. This is what I recommend, white vinegar. And yeah, so the first thing we're gonna do is drill this out so I can pop it off, and then take the new top to a friend's to help me rivet it on. Another thing I wanna point out too is a lot of these cables are attached to the frame. So let me flip this over so I can show you a bit. Okay, so here's the back underside. And you have this metal structure here that a lot of this cabling is attached to. And I cannot use this in the project I'm gonna be doing, because this is coming out of a hatchback, which did not have the cassette caddy thing that attached to the bottom of the dashboard and extended the center console. So the holes that are pre-drilled for the attachment bracket are not here. So there's really no way to, I would have to use the one out of the other dashboard to accomplish this. Otherwise I will not be able to have it mounted up. So this is gonna have to be replaced with the one out of the coupe that I got. I also wanted to show you too, this is the controller for the left and right. This one's the left one, the driver's side one, which we disconnected in the car. And then this is see the letters there? So that's the right one. That moves that over there. And there's not very much room for me to get at this. That's why I left it. I will have to remove it for building my new dashboard, because all this stuff is going to have to go back together in the new one that I'm going to be building. So before we start digging into this, I want to show this to you, that there's layers to this. This maroon colored one is the first layer we got to get through. And below that is the ductwork for the climate control. And that's all separate and attached underneath. And this here is a separate piece of plastic that part of the ductwork is attached to down there. And that part is going, this part and these climate parts are the only things, plus the wiring harness, that are going to be staying with my car. They have to go back into the new dashboard I'm rebuilding. So underneath this, there's the ductwork, and then there's this, which is the plastic that's the underside of the padded part. And as you can see, there's screws under here. So everything is screwed eventually to this. So this is the final layer that everything is attached to. And that's what we got to get down to. We got to remove this, then we got to remove this, and this, and this. And in the process, I'm not going to be throwing away any screws or any parts because I might need them for something else. So I just want to show you guys that that's what we're going to be doing. So the first thing we're going to be doing is removing the VIN number plate, and then we're going to start unscrewing everything. This wiring's not going to be able to come completely off because it's routed in multiple places. Like, see here, it's fixed to it, and I got to figure out how to pop that off without breaking it. And yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, so we're going to start out by removing everything on the front that we can to get it out of the way. Anything that we may need later, like spare parts, those kinds of things, because I'm not planning on keeping this dashboard at all. I might hold on to the bottom for a while, unless if somebody else on one of the Facebook groups needs it. But I'm going to be removing all these little plastic things, the clips, anything that I might be able to reuse later. I will remove these two when I flip it over, because there's a clip holding this in on the back, and this has some plastic things holding it in place, and I don't want to be breaking anything. Plus this is still plugged in. There's also some Phillips screws here that we're going to be removing. I'm not going to be removing any of these plastic screw things here, because I'm planning on reusing this. And this black piece is actually going to be going back in my car. I do have one of these screw things missing here, so I will be replacing that. There's another Phillips screw right here. I'm going to be popping these out. There's a metal clip on the bottom, which I will show you when I flip this over. For both of these, there's just a metal clip, two metal clips on the bottom that pop out, and they just come out. I'm going to be removing these two clips here as well. I'm going to have to remove this support bar that the glove compartment actually screws to, because there's two screws here and two screws here that will keep this from coming off. And I looked at the back again, and I think I can actually reuse this whole metal frame that most of the wiring harnesses are attached to. So that's going to be my plan. For the time being, though, if there's any metal brackets that have wiring harnesses like this one here has a wiring harness connected to it, I'm going to actually leave it screwed to this until I get the glue broken on both sides, until I can get this top part off. Just because it's going to be really awkward having the metal pieces flopping around while trying to soak this and get the top removed. It's just going to make things really weird. So I'm just going to leave them screwed to the bottom part, and it'll just make it easier when I'm able to actually separate it. So that's what we're going to do now. Is I'm going to go through. Oh, I'm also going to be pulling these off too. These, you just pull them down and they come right out like that. And when I flip it over, you'll be able to, actually you will not be able to see the screw back in here. Actually, I don't feel one in here. Maybe it's different. My my car is from Japan. It is not an American built Accord. So I've noticed that there are some minor differences. But I'm gonna have to check it out when I flip this over to see if there is actually a screw in here. Maybe that step doesn't need to be done on the Japanese ones. I did notice too that the duct seems to be set up a little slightly different, but for the most part it's the same. So I'm just pulling these off. By the way, here's an example of the type of screwdriver I was recommending. A really long Phillips that can get in there around everything. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm going to remove these two, remove these. There's not one there. There's a metal clip here. This plastic thing, metal clip there. These two metal clips. These 4 screws. I'm going to remove the glove box catch and the light switch. As you can see, it's hooked. There's a wire here, but I'm just going to unscrew this and unplug it. And you see here, there's more wiring that's attached to the metal frame there. So I'm going to be leaving this metal bracket in place. And I don't think there's anything attached to that one over there, so I might be able to remove that one. This one here does have wiring attached, so I'll have to leave that one in place too. Okay, and then I'm going to remove that Phillips, this Phillips, and this Phillips before we flip this over, and the rest of the work we'll be doing from the underside. A couple things I wanted to show you. I was able to pop this vent out. It's a little stubborn, but there's these hard plastic tabs on the top and these metal ones on the bottom. So what you have to do is reach under here and keep messing around with it while gently pulling it until it pops right out. So that's what the side vents look like when they're popped out. I got to do the same thing on this other side. I also removed this bracket here. And what I like to do is actually screw the screws back into it so I don't lose them. So this is going to be bolted into the new one, the new dashboard. I took the light out. I took the striker out. I have not popped that vent out yet, but I did remove this screw, this screw, this screw, this screw, and this screw. And this actually just popped right out, but there's not much holding it in place, as you can see. So I am now going to unplug this, and this one here I'm going to do from the back because there is a metal clip on one of the sides that's holding it in place. I don't want to wreck that because this is the only maroon blank I have. So I'm going to take care of those two now. I'm going to pop that out, and then I'm going to flip the dashboard over. Okay, so I was just looking at all of this, trying to figure out what the best thing to do, because I don't want to remove this metal bracket here quite yet because all the wiring harnesses are secured to it, and it's also secured to this metal bracket here. And then the wiring goes down, and I was trying to figure out, like, okay, there's this big piece of plastic here that's part of the dash, that's part of this part of the dash. Am I gonna have to break the dashboard to get it out? And no, I will not, because I was concerned, because if I had to break it, how am I gonna get it down to the new dash? And what I realized is once I unscrew all of this and unscrew all of this, there should be enough play for me to angle this through this space here. So I don't think we have a problem. So one other thing I do want to point out before we continue is this is where the hood release is. This is snapped right off here. So I think that's why the hood release broke on the previous owner, and hopefully that's intact on my new dash bottom. So I won't know until I start ripping that apart. So what I'm gonna do is there's one screw holding this bracket on. I'm gonna be taking this off. There's a Phillips right back there. There's a Phillips right there. There's a Phillips right there. Let me see if I can get it to, it's zooming in on this cable instead. Will that work? Anyway, that's a Phillips right there. I'm gonna try to, I think I can get to it without removing this bracket. Let's see here. There's one right here. And here's my maroon blank. That's where the cruise control main was. And see there's this metal clip right here, so I'm just gonna pinch it and it goes right out and onto the floor. And then what the next set of screws we're gonna have is all under this gasket here. Let me peel back a little bit. See there's one there, there's one there. You just gotta, there's not one in almost every spot, but the ones that are really deep, there's screws there. So we're just looking for, there's another one right there. We're just going around looking for them. Someone right there. And I can't remember if there's any up here. I don't think there is. I don't remember there being any. But as you can see here, there's another Phillips screw there. And what that is for is the defroster section. See, there's another one there, there's another one there, and there, and there. We'll worry about that stuff when we get this separated. But this part here is the defroster section. It's a separate piece. So if you wanted to swap out your defroster section for a different color to be creative, you could do that once we get this all separated. So that's what I'm gonna do next, is I'm going to take that bracket off and start pulling all these Phillips screws I can. And then I will see where we're at, and if there's any screws that I determine we missed, we'll take care of those. I forgot to mention there's also another Phillips here and one on the other side in the exact same place here. Okay, so I'm gonna get started on that now. I do wanna say something. I believe I was wrong about needing a long screwdriver, because there's a Phillips here and there's a Phillips in here, but it's for a plastic piece that goes between the two that screws into, I believe, the top padded section and fills the gap between this and this. Let me see if I can find one. I found one, I believe. So this is what I'm talking about. So this is screwed in at an angle. So there's a Phillips here holding it in place, and then the piece of trim screws into here. So I don't believe we need to get that second one out on either side that I originally stated we needed the Phillips, the really long Phillips for. So we'll have to see. Okay, so I took some of the screws out. I also took 2 screws out from here because I'm not seeing as much movement with this maroon side here as I would like to. So I pulled out the black one just to compare it, and I did get all the screws down here, but I'm noticing this one, which is part of the vent here, so there's a screw there. This one, which is right there. You can't see it, but where my finger's pointing is a Phillips screwdriver. I mean, not a screwdriver, a Phillips screw. It looks like there's, well, that one we can't get to because it's covered up by this. But this one looks like it's right in here. So I may need to pull this metal bracket off. And then the other side, everything else, I'm just looking at the other side real quick. Yeah, the other side looks correct. So I think we're all good there. But yeah, so I'm gonna try taking this bracket off, see if I can get access to that, and take those 2 Phillips screws out over there and see if this moves a little bit better. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it to the point where this maroon part here is only held down by the glue on either side. Then I can soak aside and start working on getting it set free and do the same thing on the other side. Because I'm gonna be taking this ductwork, this plastic piece, and this piece of metal and this piece of metal with all the wiring harnesses attached out of the car. And that's gonna go into my new dashboard, which will have to be attached to that one first. So on this one, this black plastic here, as you can see, there's no wiring harness or anything attached to it. That's how the dashboard came. So in fact, here's one of the clips that the wiring harness would have been attached to that's just sitting there. So this whole thing's gonna have to be removed. And I wanna turn around and put all the ductwork in place without this maroon plastic, and then bring in the maroon bottom, which I still gotta do the separation like I'm having to do here, and then put them in place. I also do wanna point out, I think I was incorrect about needing a different support structure, because these 3 Phillips screws here line up with these, that this is the bracket that has to be attached here, and that's what the mounting bracket for the center console. So, yeah, so I'm gonna get started on that next. Well, I got some bad news, everyone. This dash is stuck together. So on that black one, it literally had a lot more play in it, and it was only glued on the edges. Actually, I might be able to show you where it was glued on the edges. Yeah, here you go. See this here? Come on. I don't know why this is having a hard time focusing. There we go. That little line there is some of the leftover glue, and this here. So you get an idea where the glue was. So the American one was only glued on the ends, but this one seems to be glued along here, and I have a feeling it's glued all along the defroster. And I'd rather make my mistakes with this one than in taking it apart to gain access to this and remove the wiring harness and everything correctly, then make the mistakes on the next one I'm going to be taking apart, which was also an American one. So let's do the worst case scenario where this one is completely glued together. Because yeah, there's only a little bit of play here. As you can see, there's not, these 2 parts are not connected anymore, but this is not moving as much as it should be, and this should be completely disconnected, and it's not. And there's no more screws holding it together. So I think it's glued everywhere. So I'm going to have to bring this outside and figure out how to prop it up, and start with this section here and put some white vinegar on it, on the seam. Here, I'll bring the camera over here. Put white vinegar on this seam and on this seam here to see if I can get that to break free, and then work my way around. I also did want to show you again the defroster. So this is again the one that's eventually going to be my black top. Here's the defroster section with the screws holding it in place. So if you wanted to remove the defroster part and replace it with a different color, you could. But if you have an American dashboard, it seems that they're just glued on the ends, whereas the Japanese ones are glued everywhere. So yeah, I'm gonna get started on doing that, and I will let you know how I'm making out. All right, I'll talk to you later. Okay, so I learned a few things here. I did get the dashboard separated, as you can see. What I found, the more times I have to do this, the better I get at this. So what you want to do is you want to position the dashboard in a way that you can put a bead of white vinegar on the seam here. And it'll take between 15 seconds to a minute, but the bead will eventually work into the space between the hard plastic and the soft padded part. And once it does and it's completely gone, you want to put another bead of the vinegar on it again, and then it should almost immediately disappear. And what you'll see happen is this will eventually, they'll separate just a little bit, but you're gonna want it, once that happens, you're gonna wanna let it just sit for like an hour or so. and it will eventually pop apart. One thing that I found very interesting with this, and yes, this is completely broken. I just broke this. I did not know this, but I will be able to confirm it with my next dashboard that I got to take apart, where I'm going to be utilizing the bottom part of it. But it appears that the dashboards that are made in America, so if your VIN number starts with a 1, the dashboards are only glued on the ends. This dashboard comes from my car, which was built in Japan. It has the VIN number starts with the letter J. And this dashboard was glued all the way around. So I had to first break it on the bottom. So I positioned the dashboard in a way where I could put a bead of vinegar on that seam, and it would sit there. It wouldn't roll off. It would sit there until the vinegar was able to do its thing and get down in there. And then I put a second bead of it on there and waited like an hour or two. Then I was able to pop it apart without a problem. And I did the same thing with the ends, but it would not come apart. And I double checked for any screws that I might have missed. There wasn't any. Honda Japan glued this whole top piece. And I want to remind everybody, this plastic is almost 40 years old. It's very brittle. It did not take any effort at all for me to break that. And there's still pieces of this part still stuck to it. So, word to the wise, if you are trying to pull a dashboard apart that has a VIN number that starts with letter J, my recommendation is to put vinegar on this. Oh, see what I mean? I just totally broke that, just trying to squeeze this together. Put it on this seam here. And what I would do, because this part is so fragile, it breaks so easily because there's no structural rigidity like there is on the rest of these parts. My recommendation to you is to soak it for 24 hours. So you can put a bead of vinegar across it and put a bead of vinegar on it once every hour, just to make sure that glue is taken care of. And literally do it over a 24-hour period, and just let it sit and soak until the glue will really let go, so you don't wind up breaking it like I did here. When I did my black and tan one, it was only glued on the ends. So when I took the screws out, this came apart, and so did the other side. This dashboard wasn't like that at all. So now that I got this all separated, I'm going to work on removing this part here, this maroon part, which will leave this duct just sets in place. Literally, this maroon part screwed to the top part is what holds this duct in place. That piece there, this right here, that connects to the actual climate control, the ventilation, all that part is screwed to this padded part. So we'll have to unscrew that and figure out all the wiring and everything like that. But this is what I'm gonna do next, is now that I got this all separated, is work on getting this all apart. And I'm not gonna completely take it apart yet, because I don't wanna start building my new dashboard until I can get my VIN number, which is the plates right there, attached to my black one, and my friend is not available to help me rivet it until at least Wednesday. So if I can get this in the position that I need it in, then I'm gonna start taking the other maroon one apart too, which I'll be utilizing the bottom portion on my final dashboard. Okay, just wanted to share that information. Again, put a bead on the seam and position the dashboard so the bead can stay there without it rolling off anywhere. And what it will do is it will literally work its way into the seam itself and come in contact with the glue. And then once it completely disappears, put a second bead on there and it should disappear almost immediately. And then just let it sit for like an hour or two and then try to pop it apart. Okay, thank you for watching. Okay, so I got the top completely off. Here it is. This is the maroon one. And then here's that metal bracket with all the wiring. I was able to fish it out. There was these little, let me see if I can find one. Here's one right here. These little things that pop in there, you can just squeeze them, they'll come right out. I did want to show you all the glue and what it looks like. So here's the glue. This is the passenger side, like facing the passenger. The glove compartment goes right here, just so you know what you're looking at. Glue. See this? This is part of the defroster that's still stuck to it. And all the way down, you don't see the glue until here, here, and it looks like there's none down here, which is where the vent is and the instrument section. So I just wanted to point all that out to y'all, that this is the Japanese version. I don't believe my American ones have glue here or here. So I will see whether I'm right or wrong and when I get the other one taken apart. But I also wanted to show this to you too. So this is the underside. Again, this part stays with it. There's screws that hold it in place, and it's attached to this piece that the instrument cluster screws to. This part of the ductwork comes right off. It's literally held in place with this part of the bottom and the underside of the padded part, and that's what we're looking at right now. This is the underside of the padded part. And as you can see, the glue never sticks with it. And this is that Phillips that I was mentioning you need a really long one for. As you can see, you don't need it because it's here. It's just holds this piece on that another screw screws into, holds it in place. And then here's the screws that hold on the two sections of the defroster. Okay, so this is the last donor dashboard. The only, as you can see, the top is in fairly decent condition. The bottom is in fairly decent condition as well. I already checked, and the section here where the hood release goes into is not broken. The only damage that exists is right here. This is completely cracked and everything, but this seal looks like it's in here wrong. So it probably didn't seal well against the door either, the way that this is. So, and this is also bent down here too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start disassembling this one as well. I'm not gonna go through it as I've already gone through it with y'all with the last one, but I'm also not gonna be taking anything off of here that I don't need to. Like this bracket here has the clip here that the cable is supposed to go through is intact. And that one I think is the clip that the wiring harness for the steering column goes through. Like, I'm not taking these off because I'm gonna need them here anyway. Same thing with these, I'm gonna leave these all here. Some of these I need to replace, like this one's kind of weird, so I'm gonna pop that out and replace it. These clips are gonna stay. This is coming off because mine has the wiring harness attached to it. So this one's, I'm gonna be removing this, be popping this off, and looking to pull anything off that I need to and retain things that I need to keep. I'm gonna leave this the way it is because this is gonna stay with this. And I'm gonna figure out, once I get it apart, this middle section here, which one's actually going to wind up going in the car, because right now I have 3 of them, one that's attached to each one of the tops. So just want to share that with you guys. So I'm going to get started on this now. Okay, so I want to show you all a couple of things on this back side before I start ripping it apart, and also want to talk through what's driving me to make some of the decisions I'm making. So the first thing I want to point out is this duct here. Notice how the foam is like completely disintegrated, and if I touch this, it's gonna like turn to dust immediately. Same thing happened on the other one. However, the one that was in my car, the foam is still intact, and it's the only one that still has the cable attached to it, the actuating cable. So I'm going to be replacing this with the one that was in my car. Also, there's leftover cut wire right here. So once I get this apart, I'm gonna pinch this so I can pop that out. I'm going to be leaving this bracket in place and this bracket in place, but I will be removing this one. And what I'm going to be doing as well is looking to see what I can start installing ahead of time. Like I noticed right here, I could put the light to the glove box in there. This one has it removed, so I can put the one that I had in its place. I can also replace this. I completely removed the gasket that was there, and because that gasket was completely messed up, so I'm going to replace that with one of the ones I already have, and just work on disassembling this and taking it apart and getting it cleaned up, ready to be attached to my black top, and take it from there. Okay, so unfortunately I cannot use this dashboard here, the one that has the intact maroon section there and the intact tape deck section, and also not easy for me to show you right now, the intact hood release section. There's a clip in here that the hood release connects to, and the reason is this section here is damaged too much for me to be able to break it loose. It's cracked here. I'm sorry, I didn't have the camera where I was looking. It's cracked here, here, another place here, and the force that I need to pop this loose is going to break this. There's hardly anything holding this section right here together, and here's a mount point. So I don't know if you can see it or not. Sorry, there is a crack in there too. See, here's one of the cracks. So here, I'll make it easier for you to see. There's another crack there, all the way up to there, and there's another crack right here. So it's just, I'm risking too much trying to break this loose. So I'm going to hold on to this dashboard in case I need a full maroon one, or if anybody's interested in one, I can sell it to you. But if I were to use this, I would somehow structurally reinforce this area in a way that's non-visible, readily visible. So I'm just going to, at this point, remove all these plastic screw nuts, the metal bracket here, the other one on the other side, and anything else that I could possibly use. And the reason why I remove it now instead of just leaving it with the dashboard and storing it is I have a jar that I am putting these things into. So if I need a particular part, I know where the screws are. I can readily get to them and move forward with my project instead of having to go to where the dashboard is and then remove those parts. So I'm going to be using the bottom half of the dashboard that was in my car before. This is the one where this is melted down here, and the hood release section is snapped off inside here. So what I'm gonna have to do is put the hood release, screw it in place, and then put a screw through it here so it's stable. So what I'm also gonna have to do here with this is figure out how to remove this glue here and all of it down here, because some of these, I don't know if you can see it, but these plastic areas are left over from the other topper, and they're gonna be in the way of the new dashboard. So I gotta find a way to dissolve this glue here. And because I don't have the padded section like this, which is a lot more fragile, and also the padding inside, which you're touching when you're trying to remove the padded part. Since I don't have to worry about that now on this, I can actually use stronger or harsher means to remove the glue, because that I just have to make sure I don't damage this plastic. So that's what I'll be doing, is I'll be working on transferring any metal brackets, any nuts, any metal nuts, any plastic nuts that I need for this dashboard over to here. That'll add some more structural rigidity as I'm trying to remove this glue, and that's going to be the focus for today. And getting the glue all removed and getting this bottom portion prepared and ready to be installed on the mated with the top and everything else, so I can eventually get it in a position to be able to install it back on the car. But I wanted to show you guys that while you work on your projects, you have to be conscientious. Is this worth it? I mean, I would have preferred to have been able to move forward with this, because the parts that are visible are in better shape, with the exception of this area. And it's also nice to be able to hook things up the way that they were designed from the factory, because this one is broken. I'll see if I can show it to you. Let me see if I can get a light on this a little bit better. Does that help at all? Kind of. See how there's that chunk missing out of there? So, and I can't, there's no way you're gonna be able to see it in the other one, because the other one still has this center plastic thing that's in the way too, so you're not gonna be able to see it. But let me see if I can turn the overhead light on too. Maybe that will help. Let me, I turn this like this. There we go. See, that piece there is completely broken, and I actually brought in the hood release. I think this one might actually be a little bent too. So this end here clips into that top part, and this bottom part screws in right there. And then your cable hooks in here, and the end of the cable hooks in here. So when you pull the release, that's how it works. So what I'm gonna be doing is drilling a hole, putting this in place and drilling a hole from this all the way through the bottom here and putting a screw through it, and hopefully being able to address that issue. It's easier to do some of these things with the parts out, with the dashboard out of the vehicle. So I'd rather take care of that stuff now. Once I get that taken care of, I will be removing the hood release because I still have to connect it to the cable that needs to be routed through that area once the dashboard's in place. So, but I do want to get all the rest of the steps completed with it out of the car and disassembled. Also, in case you're wondering, the manual shows a pin that the dashboard's supposed to hook onto. Here's the hole that the pin lines up into. And if you look at my video from removing the dashboard before, you'll see the pin sticking out of the firewall there. It's pretty big. With the top on, you really can't see it, but it's right there. It's behind this little plastic thing here. So this is the bolt hole that attaches to the firewall, and then the area the pin comes through is right there. So I'll come over here to this one. I was pointing out the bolt hole, and there's the pin. So when you're trying to reinstall this and line things up, I thought this is kind of cool too. You can see the defroster portion. There's a gasket in the bottom of this that lines up with the defroster portion, which is metal in the car, that the whole climate control bolts to the bottom. And so the air comes through these vents here up into the defroster, but also there's these channels on the sides that go to the doors. So that's how all that works. And there's a seal that runs all the way along this edge here. So I just thought I'd point that stuff out in case you guys are interested. If not, no worries, just ignore me. And I think that's all I have to share right now. So once I get all this stuff done, I'll be wiping things down and cleaning them up, because it appears my car has never been cleaned. It's coated with cigarette tar and dirt and stuff. So I will be once I get the glue situation addressed here, I will be, and also getting the hood release situated, I will be wiping this whole thing down before I start putting the dashboard back together. Okay, so we are about ready to install the dashboard back into the car, but I wanted to step through a few things here. First of all, please, please, please do your due diligence and make sure all your wiring is where it's supposed to be before you put this in the car. The worst thing is if you go and install this in the car, bolt it together and stuff like that, and you go to do one thing and come to find out the wire is not where it's supposed to be, or worse yet, you crushed one of the connectors or severed the cables or whatever. So triple check to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. I was stepping through my head the order of operation I was going to do. When I got to the clock, I realized the clock wire was not there. It was in the general vicinity, but when I put the top part of the dash, screwed it to the bottom part of the dash, I didn't take that into consideration, look for it and fish it through. So it was where it wasn't supposed to be. So I was able to actually unscrew the whole defroster section, which allowed me to open it up just enough to move this to where it needed to be. So a couple things I did want to go through is I wanted to point out that you notice there's a little bit of a gap here that wasn't there before. And this is because when Honda screwed these together, there was this gap here. And so they used the glue and they squashed this together. And if you see, there's a little bit of play in it, but this is as tight as I can go with the screws. So I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that there's going to be a little bit more of a gap than there was before because this isn't glued. I also want to forewarn you to please use caution when screwing these back together. You don't want to over tighten these because it's very easy to snap off the plastic part where the screw goes into. I did that actually by accident on this the screw that's here in the corner of the defroster. So I just wanted to step through some things here. So let's start on this side. So this blue connector here, this is for your power sunroof. I have a hatchback, but they pre-wired it. See this gap here, sorry. There's nothing you can really do about it. Yeah, so I have a hatchback and it's pre-wired for the power sunroof. This is your power mirrors. This is this is your gauge cluster. These are your three, your retractor switch, your rear defroster switch, and your dash dimmer thing. Down here, actually let's start here. This is that orange connector that plugged into the side of the fuse box, and that cable snaps right on here to this piece here. Then you have all of these. Well, these two here, one plugs into the chime, and the other one plugs into the dimmer controller, which are both screwed to the back of the panel that goes right here. These are all those cables that I was complaining about before that have the nasty connector. See how it is? It's just awful. So these kind of messed up my fingers for a couple of days trying to remove these, but these plug into the box that goes right here. And then in here we have, this plugs into this connector right here. And this is for the light that lights up the stereo. I broke it. I got a new one in better condition coming, but I put a piece of electrical tape over it to mimic what's supposed to look like. And these here, trying to pull them up. This one goes to the fan switch. This one goes to the temperature, the piece of plastic that goes over the temperature slider that gives you allows you to see the temperature and the numbers for the fan speed. As you can see, it's blue and it matches this right here. And it just lights this piece up, okay? So that's what that goes to. And if you notice, this one here has a yellow connector, and this is all your buttons and stuff. And that yellow connector plugs into this yellow connector. So, and then you got the clock. And I already plugged this the switch in for the light for the glove box. And then you also have the light for your ashtray. And you got the two plugs here. My hand's in the way. There's one there and the other one there for the cigarette lighter. Mine's broke and I don't have enough pieces to actually assemble it. And I'm debating whether I'm going to replace this at some point with some type of USB thing that's shaped to look just like this. So that's it on the wiring. I also have the cable that was going to that vent run here. Remember this whole thing? So what I'm gonna do, okay, so yeah, that's done. So I think I'm just about ready to put this in the car. So what the order of operation is, what we're gonna do is the first thing we're gonna do is open up both doors, because if you remember, this car, the doors press against here to make a seal for the defroster in the doors. So we got to make sure both doors are open. There's a pin. It's a pretty thick pin. It's almost like the size of a railroad spike that's sticking out of the firewall that the dashboard sets on. And the hole, I don't know if you can see it in here. Let me turn the light on over the counter here. So you have that hole there. That's the bolt for the top of the dashboard. But to the left of it, see this hole here? That's where the pin goes into. So you're gonna wanna line that up, and I'm gonna shut this back off. So we're gonna wanna line that up, and then that pin will hold the dashboard in place. Once we have the dashboard in place, the first thing we're gonna wanna do is hook this back up. So we're going to want to grab the driver's side cable and hook it back up, and then we'll be able to mount that here, fully mount it here. So we're gonna wanna deal with all the metal cables first. So we're gonna wanna do that one. We're going to want to fish the cable that connects to this here. We wanna fish that cable up through here. There's actually a hole right here, so it's gotta go through here is where it needs to go. So we're gonna fish that through here so it's where it needs to be. And then we're going to reconnect the hood release, excuse me, cable, and get that ready to go. Once we got the metal done, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the wiring. So we're going to plug this in. We're going to plug all of these in, and we're going to make sure that everything else is where it needs to be. And once that's done, we're gonna wait on these two. Once that's done, we're going to then fish these through and reassemble the climate control here. And once that's done, we will be in a position to bolt this into place. Starting with, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna start all the bolts first. So we're gonna put the bolt here, we're gonna put the bolt here, here, those two there, here, and here. And once they're all started, then we'll go back and tighten them all down. And once that's done, we'll be able to reinstall the glove box and the trim piece. And then we will work on putting the gauge cluster back in here and putting this whole thing back together. It's a lot easier to do all this without the steering column and the steering wheel in the way. So we will do the steering column and the steering wheel last. So I just wanted to step through what we're gonna do and in what order and why before we actually go and do it. Okay, so I got the dashboard setting in place here. Got it dirty from my hands and all that. So a couple of things. I had a challenge with, there's these metal hook thingies that come out that are on this side and on that side that the outsides bolt into. So when I was trying to put the dashboard in, that side was getting hung up on the outside. I had to pop it inside the dashboard, but then it was also getting hung up on this. I can't open this any farther. Let me see if I can grab the flashlight. On this piece that sticks out, I was getting it caught up on there. See how there's a metal bracket right there that we would bolt into? So if you're trying to put this in and it's getting hung up, that might be why. Another thing that happened was my cable that opens and closes the vent on that side fell off. It's right there. So I got to figure out how to get it back in there. And then get it connected. I was going to use some Gorilla tape to tape the clip back in place, because the clip, I can't show it to you, but the clip that's sticking out right there goes between two pieces of plastic that are just sandwiched together. So it just fell out. So I was just going to tape that up to get that to stick. As you can see, I got a lot of wires and stuff I got to straighten out here. This climate control did not make it in there. So what I might do is take this cable apart, fish it back through, and do it all through there. But today I'm going to work on hooking this up to, along with the other side, the driver's side, and getting that all mounted in there together. So I'll start with that. Okay, so I had to pull the dashboard back out because this cable fell off while I was trying to put it in. And also a lot of the wires in the front fell in. So I pulled it back out so I could secure this. I put some Gorilla Tape here. I made sure that it's right about giving room for this cable to actuate with this not moving. And I also taped it here, which is where another piece of tape was already there to hold that cable in place. Okay, the biggest thing was the cabling for the clock fell back inside while I was putting the dashboard in. So I pulled it out. I used some painter's tape to hold it in place. And I pulled all these cables through as well, trying to get everything out of the way that could get in the way of me putting this back in. The rest of these cables are fine where they're at, but there were some issues here. So just double checking some things while I have it back out. And I think everything's all good. So I'm gonna try to put this back in again. So here it is all together. I don't know if you can see, but the top is black. The bottom's maroon, all put back together. I don't have a tape deck yet. I'm still waiting for it to get here. But everything should work. I haven't taken the car for a test drive yet, but I plan to. And this is just setting in place. I wanna drive the car first to make sure the steering is straight before I have a nicer one than this that I'm gonna glue in place. But I just stuck that there for now. It's probably gonna go flying off when I start driving this car. But I gotta do some final, like just wiping everything down, cleaning it up. Also replaced the center console there. And a couple things I did want to point out is as you put your dashboard back together, check everything. Let's see here, does clock work? No. I wonder if I blew a fuse with that. I'll have to check to see if I blew a fuse because that clock should be working and it looks like it's not. So far everything else seems to be working, but I haven't taken the car for a test drive, so I might need to pull this all apart again. Yeah, make sure that things like this work. What I noticed with this is when I went to hook up the cable back to it, it needs to be, I think, in the full open position when you clip it back on. So make sure you pull the wire through as far as it should go, hook it back on, and then clip it and make sure that this operates correctly. So as you can see, this is, also want to make sure that these are operating correctly too. You know, move them, make sure they're not binding, and the same thing with this. Even though we didn't take it off, we just want to make sure everything's working correctly. Okay, so I'm gonna probably try to take another video of this outside with the car outside, not just natural light, so y'all can see what it looks like. All right, thank you. Okay, also if you want to see what a black and maroon dashboard looks like, this is what it looks like. Well, now the dash is all back together. I know this is pretty dark in here. I do not have my flashlight in here for you to see, but I did take a video earlier outside of the finished product, and I hope you guys like what you see. I hope you found this video helpful, and please like and subscribe. And I appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate the comments as well. Thank you for watching.